Hey, what's going on, everybody? Gerald here with your forecast. I am currently standing up in some random lounge here on campus, so sorry if this looks a little strange, but you do what you gotta do, and unfortunately, this is what I have to work with right now. So we're gonna make it work. So I apologize if the webcam is shaky because I'm doing this on like a small little circular table that you can't see, but anyway, it's quite the setup I have going on right now. Anyway, with that said, thank you for joining me. We are going to talk about some weather today, including that kind of spring-like pattern that we're in right now, and that is going to bring the chance of some storms to us in the south, and then some snow as well for others in the country. And I do think going into this weekend, we get a pretty nice northwest flow event, so if you're able to go to the mountains and you haven't seen snow yet this winter, might be the time to do it, and we'll talk about that. So, yeah, that's really all I've got right now. Let's go ahead and get into it so I don't take up too much of your time today. Looking at radar out there right now, really not much going on. In the grand scheme of things, it's really quiet. You can't see it on radar, and I'll show you on satellite here in a second, but we do have quite the storm off the Atlantic coast right now, and I'll show that to you here in just a second. But you can tell we have really nice weather out there right now, and here in Charlotte specifically, you can tell on satellite it is absolutely gorgeous outside. We are in the low 60s here. Just beautiful, really about as good as it can get for February standards, at least until we get to the middle of this week, and it gets even better for some of us. But right now, this is that storm system off the Atlantic that is helping to produce kind of some cloudy weather in the northeast, as kind of the backside of this is bringing in some of those clouds. But for those of us in the southeast, just a beautiful day out there, even into sections of the Midwest, into Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, just a really nice day out there. And looking at those temperatures too, look at this warm air just surging northward today. Like I said, here in Charlotte in the low 60s, same for Raleigh. And then as you get further south here into the mid-south, we're pushing 70s in some places. Look at just this warm air riding all the way up the Mississippi River Valley, helping to create some of that really nice springtime weather. Although we will pay for that with some rain here going into the next 48 hours or so, especially into the southern plains, and we'll talk about that. But looking at those current hazards, not really much to look at. You can see here on the map, just not really much going on. That will change, like I said, going later on as the storm kind of ramps up. But as of right now, kind of enjoy this really nice weather that we have. Looking at tonight, a pretty warm night here into the Mississippi River Valley. A little bit colder here into the mid-Atlantic and northeast, but nothing really that cold for early February standards. So, we'll take the good with the bad here with these really warm afternoons, even if it is a tad chilly in the mornings. That's to be expected, obviously, for early February. But looking at tomorrow's highs, we get even warmer than we are today here into the southeast. Those temperatures will moderate here into the kind of the Midwest region as that storm system gets going and helps to cause some kind of cool, cloudy, rainy weather. But for those of us here in the southeast where the sun is still out tomorrow, it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. So, looking at the next day going into Wednesday, I do just kind of want to give a quick, rundown of the week before I go into the specifics on that storm. But another nice day. Going into Wednesday, having troubles with my words today, but I think Wednesday will probably be the nicest day in the southeast, because as we get into Thursday, we kind of reintroduce some of those rain and cloudy chances. So if there's a day that you can get outside and just take some time, breathe in the air, go do whatever you want, just get some fresh air, Wednesday is the day for those of us in the southeast. So it's just going to be absolutely gorgeous. Luckily, I don't work Wednesday, so I think I'm going to take Wednesday night off, go for a walk, and just really enjoy this nice weather before eventually going into Thursday. That rain kind of returns for most of us in the east, although it will still be warm on Thursday, still dealing with this warm air, although much cloudier and a lot more wet going into this weekend. So let's go ahead and talk about these storm systems that we have coming up ahead. Still really nice right now. That change is going into tonight for some of us, and especially into tomorrow afternoon here into the southern plains. You see kind of this low pressure is going to slowly get going, and it's going to kind of stall here for a little bit before finally really ramping up going later into the week. But this is really whenever that kind of more cloudy, dreary weather, begins tomorrow here from Oklahoma City down towards the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and even back towards Little Rock, before eventually going into Wednesday. The system really starts to get its act together, taps into that Gulf moisture, and with that, we will have a severe weather threat tomorrow and Wednesday, both here into sections of the southern plains and into the Dixie Alley area. Although I really don't expect a blockbuster event out of this, but nonetheless, we do have that chance for severe weather, and we'll watch out for that. before eventually this system really cranks up going into Thursday, and that's when those rain chances really take back over much of the eastern half of the country. Although we will have some snow, but it'll be a pretty small kind of swath on the northern and the western side of the system. But enough to talk about for sure. And then this thing really cranks up going into the Great Lakes before eventually kind of clearing out a little bit before this weekend. We get another piece of energy to kind of come up from the Gulf, and that's going to likely phase and help bring some northwest flow snow into this weekend, into the Appalachian chain, and maybe even a little bit of back end snow or sleet into New England going into the kind of middle part or latter half of this coming weekend. But we have plenty of time to iron that out. Let's go and talk about some of this severe weather, though. So tomorrow we do have this marginal risk area here in sections of southeastern Texas from Houston down the coastline and then back up towards the Austin and Dallas area. So, this is pretty much the smallest threat level that we can get that's worth really noting. So nothing too crazy here, but nonetheless, that threat is there, so we do need to talk about it. Same story for Wednesday. This threat then moves to the east, going into Dixie Alley here from all of Louisiana, Mississippi, much of Alabama, and then as well as Little Rock and Memphis being in this threat area for Wednesday, seeing the potential of some strong storms. Taking a look at some of the timing on this a little more in depth. We'll start here in the southern plains into Texas. You can see going into tomorrow afternoon and really into the overnight into Wednesday, we get kind of not much, but some of these ingredients that are going to match up to potentially produce some stronger storms. And again, this really won't be that big of a deal, but some of us likely will see some stronger winds. And then eventually going into Wednesday afternoon, you see we get a bit more of those ingredients to line up here into sections of Louisiana and Mississippi. And we'll go ahead and move the map over here for you, and let me move our time ahead. So again, this is Wednesday afternoon. Those ingredients get much better for those severe storms here into sections of Louisiana, Mississippi, and then kind of fizzle out as we go into Wednesday night before getting another small surge going into Thursday afternoon here into sections of South Carolina, Georgia, and the Florida Panhandle. But again, nothing really off the charts here before that severe threat finally dies down going into this weekend when we get that colder weather to work its way back in. So the bigger story, I think, other than the severe weather, will more likely be just the rainfall totals, especially here along the Mississippi River Valley from Louisiana up towards St. Louis. We're likely going to see, upwards of past 2 inches of rainfall here in these areas. So we'll watch for that. A little bit less rain here into the mid-Atlantic, I think, just because as the low pressure gets so far north up here into sections of Michigan, it's going to be kind of difficult to tap into some of that moisture further down to the south. So not too bad in terms of rainfall to the mid-Atlantic, but definitely, 1 to 3 inches is pretty likely out here towards the Mississippi River Valley. So talking about that snow, though, again, I do think we'd get some with this system, but this really isn't a blockbuster event, especially for February standards in the Midwest. Pretty likely 1 to 3 inches with this. It's going to be a pretty heavy wet snow, so it's not going to be that kind of fluffy, powdery snow that you might want to see that accumulates a bit better. And then going into the northeast as well, seeing the potential for some of that snow, kind of confined to the same areas that have been seeing that snow all winter long up here into the higher elevations of Vermont, New Hampshire, upstate New York, and up into Maine. Now, something that I do think will be a bit more exciting for probably a lot of people watching this will be that northwest flow. I do think on the back side of this, whenever we get that second system to kind of phase, I think we'll get a pretty good northwest flow event here, especially up into West Virginia where you tap into a little bit more of that lake effect kind of fuel, if you will. But I think all the way down here into North Carolina, we'll see that. So if you're free this weekend and you haven't seen snow yet this year, might be the time to do it because, we're running out of time. I know it's early February, but the way this winter's gone, it feels like we are running out of time. So not a bad idea at all to kind of take advantage of some of that snow. So looking at these temperatures and looking a little bit further into the long range, again, we got that big warm up to start this week before eventually the system moves through and we cool back down going into this weekend, much like last weekend was where we had a pretty cold weekend throughout much of the east. I don't expect anything like that in terms of the severity of that cold, especially like we had in New England, but definitely back to below average, more February-like conditions before. I think eventually going into the following week, we get right back to those above average temperatures. And then we do have some signs that potentially going late into February, this pattern tries to flip and we get some cold air back into the east. But, we'll just have to see, and I wouldn't put too much stock into it. And the other problem with that is by the time we get here, we're getting into late February. So our sun angle is becoming more spring-like anyway. So in terms of snow chances, we'll see. But it's just once you get past the middle of February, it really gets tough to get snow here in the southeast and mid-Atlantic. But nonetheless, we'll watch. We have had some big March snowstorms in this region of the country before. That's not my forecast, but nonetheless, climatology says it is certainly possible. So with all that said, we do have some active weather coming up, but honestly, I'm just excited for the spring-like weather going through the first half of this week. It's felt really nice walking around campus, not having to, wear a ton of layers, especially being from South Carolina. There's a lot of people here that go to Charlotte, I find, that are from the Northeast, and kind of during these normal winter days here, they're wearing shorts and T-shirts, and I'm walking around all bundled up. But that's just me, so I'm excited for the spring-like weather. It should be nice. With all that said, though, if you did like the video, make sure to hit that like button. And if you haven't already subscribed, I'd love for you to do so. We're really trying to continue this growth. We passed 1,000 subscribers, which is super awesome. And we'll look to hit that next milestone ahead. But anyway, I hope y'all have a great rest of your evening, and I will see you all tomorrow.